I'm in the process of breaking down AI stocks to buy. AI stocks, of course, are really starting to accelerate. Nvidia being the NVDA stock, of course, being the sort of go to look toward as to what's going on with AI stocks, broadly speaking. I like Nvidia. I think it's a strong buy over a long period of time, but I'm looking at some other things when it comes to AI stocks to buy. Nvidia, to me, breaking down Nvidia, that's the hardware, sort of the backbone. But beyond that, once all these companies ramp up and they buy those semiconductors and they get their capacity built up, what's next for AI stocks? And if you're looking for AI stocks to buy, this kind of breakdown, the philosophical look at Nvidia, of course, NVDA stock, that they're selling off basically the infrastructure for these companies. But the next two phases, of course, are cloud and services. That companies that will sort of accelerate in that area are what is next for AI stocks. And this helps you understand which AI stocks to buy when you're looking to invest in here. Now, there are some stocks that are being kind of forgotten. Even though they're sitting there saying, listen, we made some investments and we're seeing some gains, their stocks are being ignored. Whereas Nvidia, of course, the world's biggest or most traded stock, is definitely not being ignored. Again, I look at Nvidia stock when it comes to AI stocks to buy. I look at toward Nvidia and say, that's the possibility in the future. Meaning, Nvidia is telling us via its sales and revenue growth that other companies are ramping up. The companies that Nvidia is selling their semiconductors to. The services in the cloud is what's next. And if you're looking for AI stocks to buy, that's what's to look for. What I have here, a quick breakdown of a few of the bigger players, but then I've got a long list of AI stocks to buy that you're going to want to look at. On my channel, I'm going to start breaking these down individually so you have a better understanding of which AI stocks to buy. Let's jump in and I'll show you a few charts. Here's a real quick look at Nvidia stock, NVDA, the ticker symbol. This is the 4-hour bar chart, and as you can see from the last, February 21st, their earnings release, Nvidia stock shooting upward. But again, from a philosophical standpoint, I look at Nvidia as telling us what the future potential of other companies will be. Nvidia is going to provide the backbone, the structure with their chips. Perfect. But you need to move beyond that because services and AI cloud storage is really what's next. Fundamentally, Apple Computer. Once they sell a laptop, they really don't get a whole lot more money out of you with regard to hardware. That's why they step in and sell that software. But there aren't too many companies that are both hardware and software on a behemoth scale, such as the way Nvidia is with regard to its hardware. But I did want to break down, I saw an interesting article on Nvidia looking at their free cash flow and why that was an argument that the stock itself Nvidia stock could go higher. And I thought that was an interesting article because it pointed one thing out to me that I didn't really look at from initially. And that's that the fact that Nvidia, it's a non-linear growth. And what that means is that should Nvidia move from, say, 10 billion to 15 billion, a 50% increase in a revenue, and this is a hypothetical, I'm not creating numbers or anything like that, that the margins themselves don't move up 50% as well or anything like that, that there's a non-linear relationship, meaning that free cash flow, the amount of money that Nvidia has to invest in order to gain more revenue is less. So that was a compelling argument, I felt. But the thing for me is I break things down, when I break things down with regard to looking at any particular stock, I ask the question, it's sort of like, what's the color between black and white? Gray. All right? Or you could just call the color that you're looking at gray. And here's what I'm trying to get at. analysts have broken down the future potential for Nvidia stock based on revenue and earnings per share. From that, investors can take a look at Nvidia stock and say, listen, this one's overpriced or underpriced. Nvidia is just slightly underpriced. So when we look at free cash flow and we ask the question, what's next for Nvidia? It isn't so much so that there's going to be the free cash flow is really going to necessarily push that more. I get all the information I need out of earnings per share projection versus saying free cash flow, you're not looking at that. The end result is about the same. And it's something that I looked at and I said, okay, I get your argument, but I'm going to go forward. Nvidia's stock is a little bit overpriced for an AI stock comparatively. There are some AI stocks out there that are undervalued. In the meantime, Nvidia, again, to me, shows you what the potential is for AI stocks. Adobe stock, it's off a little bit until you take a bigger look at it. Adobe stock, I like Adobe stock a great deal. Sold off a little bit when a competitor, which that's something else with Nvidia that you have to kind of keep in mind, is that the competitors are really going to sort of eat into the top line and then, of course, the bottom line. One of the competitors to Adobe announced what they're doing, and Adobe stock, ADBE, the ticker symbol, of course, dropping a little bit. Adobe itself, a little bit overpriced relative to other potential investments. Looking at projected earnings per share for Adobe systems, again, I like Adobe. I even use their Adobe Premiere. You'll start seeing some of the results of that on the videos here pretty soon. But you're looking at $17.93 for 2024, 2025, $20.36. Looking at 2024 earnings per share based on price, 3.26% for Adobe when it comes to yield. All right. The U.S. 10-year Treasury is trading at about 4.3%. So Adobe stock itself, a little overpriced, regardless of the fact that there is a future sort of revenue increase along with earnings per share. It's overpriced relatively, and because of that, because of the big run up in AI stocks, you might want to wait a minute until we see some kind of dip. Now, we've got some information coming in for the U.S. economy. As an economist, when I break things down, I ask the question, what's going to happen with the economy before I pull the trigger on any kind of stock investment? Adobe stock, along with a lot of these other stocks, I think that the stock market itself is a little too high, that certain stocks you can buy on the dip, and I believe a lot of these AI stocks are probably going to dip a bit. In the meantime, Amazon, another AI stock, AMZN stock, AMZN is the ticker symbol, continually moving higher. One of the things about Amazon that you have to understand is their cloud computing. This is how Amazon becomes an AI stock. Their cloud computing potential, they're behemoths. And I think they're still holding on to the number one slot, although you get Microsoft and a couple other companies, Google, who are nibbling away at that market share. But this is a new market share, so Amazon as an AI stock really has a lot of upside, and it continues to move forward. Earnings per share, looking at 2024, $4.16. What about yield? When you look at yield for Amazon stock is significantly overpriced relative to its future earnings per share. But again, there's the build out. We go back to what I said about Nvidia stock, all right, and AI stocks broadly speaking. Nvidia tells us what the future is. Amazon hasn't necessarily realized with its cloud and services what the potential will be for its own revenue. We're not seeing that just yet. So this current price of $173.50 for Amazon as an AI stock to buy could look very inexpensive once we start seeing the results over the course of the next couple quarters of what Amazon is doing and creating within its cloud AWS services. That's huge. Again, you look at Nvidia and you say, that's the architecture. That's the backbone. But what are these cloud behemoths going to do? What are the service companies going to do? And that's something that I'm kind of looking at. Amazon, of course, having many different departments, but that's one of the bigger areas. Microsoft. Again, they're really trying to compete, and as you can see, MSFT stock itself moving higher, staying up relatively speaking. Looking at future earnings per share, 11.23 and 12.83 for 2024 and 2025 for Microsoft stock itself in the next 2 years consecutively, and then yield just shy of 3%. Again, the U.S. 10-year Treasury yield trading at about 4.3%. So Microsoft stock at this price, a little overpriced. All these AI stocks have been pushed higher. Microsoft is obviously pushing into those realms where it's a little too high. Some individuals fear kind of a stock sell-off. I look at it from another picture that we have inflation numbers coming in that's going to show that the U.S. economy continues to move strongly forward. Employment numbers are very strong. Given that, inflation will not fall as fast as the Federal Reserve wants. And once the stock market accepts that as reality, we're likely to see a big sell-off in stocks across the board. Then you're going to be looking at Microsoft's stock and saying, listen, this is one of the AI stocks that you would want to buy. And it's dipping. At this price point right here, I wouldn't be buying Microsoft stock. Here is a list of others, and I just kind of put this together. I have looked at and done videos on nearly all of these stocks. I just put one up on IBM. IBM stock as an AI stock to buy, their yield is over 5% given the next 4 quarters. But people just aren't paying attention to IBM stock. They're not garnering as much attention on the headlines. Investing in stocks is a popularity contest, if you will. If enough investors don't nibble on IBM stock, it's not going to necessarily move higher, even though it has been moving higher relatively over the past couple of weeks. I'm going to be breaking down these AI stocks individually in various videos, and I'll break down what I think based on their future earnings per share and what their yield could be, and whether or not these stocks, these AI stocks, are stocks to buy. I'm going to break down a lot more content for AI stocks because this is clearly one of the areas within our economy that's really going to transition into something I've been really kind of getting involved in. I've been kind of looking at some AI projects myself, and so it's really kind of sucking me in. So make sure to hit that like and follow button. I will break down all of these stocks again if I haven't covered them already. Most of them I think I've touched on at least once or twice. They represent different kinds of companies within AI stocks, sort of the entire sphere. Make sure to hit that like and follow button, and I'll break down these stocks and you'll catch that in your feeds. We'll see you in the next video.